She didn't cry because of what he said. She cried because she realized she wasn't allowed to be herself, and she'd known it since she was 5. That moment never really leaves you. It embeds itself in the silence between your sentences. It lives in the smile you force when you'd rather scream. It lives in your need to be agreeable, liked, harmless. And maybe this sounds like you. Maybe you've spent years trying to become someone easier to love. But what if the part of you you've been trying to silence is the part keeping you alive? Carl Jung didn't believe your so-called flaws were defects. He believed they were messages, carriers of energy, strength and memory, misunderstood because we were too young, too unsupported, or too afraid to see them clearly. Take Anna. She was told by a therapist she felt too much. She nodded. But later she told me it was like hearing "you're fundamentally wrong." Her whole life had been that sentence in disguise. Too emotional, too intense, too soft. So she tried to fix herself, flatten the feelings, be less inconvenient, be healthy. But the cost? She lost the very thing that made her extraordinary. And she's not alone, you've done this too. You tried to erase the fire, shrink the voice, control the chaos. You started optimizing your personality, forgetting that your soul never asked to be managed, it asked to be met. What if the flaw you hate is actually the wisdom your body has carried for years? The raw, unedited language of your truth trying to reach you? That's not weakness. That's survival strategy becoming strength. The girl who was too much? She was sensing everything no one else would name. The boy who withdrew? He was the only one feeling the fracture in the room. The rebel? She wasn't defiant. She was defending her soul from erasure. These aren't sentimental reframes. They're radical revisions of your story. Because if you don't change the story will keep changing you. Jung wrote, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That means the gold isn't outside you. It's buried under the parts you've called shame. So before you try to become someone more polished, more positive, more productive, ask the real question. What have I called a flaw that might be my gift in disguise? There's a room in your psyche that most people never enter. It's not locked. But you've learned to walk past it every day like it doesn't exist. And yet, it's where your reactions live, your shutdowns, your overthinking, your jealousy, your avoidance, your heat. Carl Jung called it the shadow, not because it's evil, but because it's hidden. It's made up of everything you were told not to be. The grief no one held. The rage you weren't allowed to feel. The tenderness they laughed at. The intuition they called irrational. The brilliance they called arrogance. We don't outgrow these things, we bury them. And what we bury doesn't disappear. It leaks through control, through perfectionism, through numbness, through the tears you can't explain, through the panic that makes no sense. Through your biting tone with the people who deserve your love. You say you're fine, but your nervous system is screaming. You say you're strong, but inside you're brittle from holding everything alone. You say it's in the past, but your future keeps looking like a rerun of your earliest wound. This is not failure. This is unconscious life running the show while you keep performing the part that feels safe. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And if you've ever wondered why the same types of relationships hurt you, why your patterns keep cycling, why you sabotage things right when they start to feel real, it's not because you're broken. It's because a part of you is still waiting to be acknowledged. The shadow doesn't want to destroy your life. It wants to hand it back to you. But it won't do it on your timeline. It will come through dreams, triggers, slips of the tongue, the people who activate you most. And yes, it's uncomfortable. That's why most people never go near it. But the part of you buried, the one still sitting in that forgotten room, it hasn't given up on you. It's been watching, waiting. Not to punish you, but to return you to something you didn't realize you lost. Not a flaw, not a disorder, not a defect. A gift you were told to fear. So here's your invitation, not to fix it, not to fight it. Just pause, open the door, let it speak. And then in the comments below, if you're brave, Name one part of yourself you've kept in that room. You don't have to explain it, just name it. That might be all it takes to start hearing it again. They threw him from the sky the moment he was born, Hephaestus. The child of the gods, rejected for being deformed, crippled, imperfect. His own mother cast him out of Olympus. He fell for an entire day before hitting the sea. That's how the story begins, but it's not really about a myth, it's about you. About what happens when the world tells you you don't belong here. Hephaestus didn't disappear. He built a forge, not to prove himself, but because something inside him refused to stay broken. In the dark, with no audience, he shaped flame and metal. He worked alone, ash-covered, bent, limping. But what he made changed everything. The gods who had abandoned him came crawling back. They needed what only he could create. The outcast became the one who forged their weapons, their palaces, their thrones. And here's the part most people miss. Hephaestus wasn't saved by revenge. He was transformed because he didn't abandon the part of himself they tried to erase. His flaw never went away, he turned it into something holy. This is the alchemy Jung was talking about, not spiritual bypassing, not blind positivity. Alchemy means the part of you that hurts the most might hold the key to what you were born to do. So ask yourself this, what part of you was thrown away too soon? What did you exile because someone else couldn't understand it? Maybe your flaw wasn't a flaw. Maybe it was power, untrained, wisdom unprotected. Oh, the story still in progress. Maybe your Olympus wasn't a mountain. Maybe it was your home. Maybe it was the moment your father called you weak for crying. The day your teacher said you were disruptive for asking questions. The year your silence became your only survival strategy. You were told to be less, and now you wonder why you feel invisible. But here's the truth. The people who change the world are almost always the ones who were told they don't fit inside it. Beethoven created his greatest symphony after going deaf. Frida Kahlo turned chronic pain into color and form and truth. And the cracked pot, leaking water, unknowingly watered flowers along the path. These weren't victories despite flaws, they were victories through them. The forge is the place where pain becomes creation. And sometimes the only way to become yourself is to walk straight into the fire, so here's your moment. What have you buried that wasn't meant to die? What flaw have you tried to erase? That might be the birthplace of something holy. Write it, say it, reclaim it. The world doesn't need you perfect, it needs you real. You're strong for so long, and then one day you fall apart in the middle of a grocery store parking lot. And no one sees it, no one understands. You don't even understand. You just know something snapped. That's what happens when the thing you've buried starts demanding to be felt. Most people think breakdowns come out of nowhere, but they don't. They come when the shadow we've ignored begins to leak through the cracks. Carl Jung warned us every good quality has its bad side. Because even your gifts, if held too tightly, can become cages. Courage becomes recklessness, kindness becomes codependence, discipline becomes control. We perform the version of ourselves the world will accept, and we lose the part that's been quietly begging to be known. You've seen this. The empath who burns out. The leader who can't ask for help. The loyal one who always gets left. Not because they're flawed, but because they turn their gifts into armor. It happens slowly. You overfunction to feel safe. You over-apologize so no one sees your rage. You stay busy so you never have to sit with the ache. But eventually the mask cracks. You achieve everything and feel nothing. You hold it all together until your body breaks. You become who everyone wanted and feel like no one at all. This is an antiodromia and the psychological law of reversal. When your life leans so far into one identity that the opposite surges forward, not to punish you, but to restore balance. You smile all the time. One day you won't be able to. You stay strong for everyone. One day you'll collapse. You never ask for what you need. One day you'll explode at the person who offers it. This isn't sabotage. It's your psyche trying to save you. And if this is where you are, on the edge, exhausted, ready to give up, maybe this is not your breakdown, maybe it's your beginning, maybe this is your forge. The place where your real life starts, not when you perform, but when you feel. Because the trait you've been told to hide may be the exact thing that can bring you back to life. So, what have you been performing that you're tired of pretending is real? And what's the one part of yourself you've been most afraid to show? Say it, in your journal, in the mirror, in the comments, not to be fixed, but to be free. There's a moment in every transformation when the truth becomes unbearable. Not because it's cruel, but because it reveals how long you've lived without it. You look back at the parts of yourself you tried to kill, the fire, the mess, the ache, and realize those weren't the problem. The problem was pretending they didn't exist. Carl Jung didn't talk about wholeness as perfection, he talked about integration. About meeting the parts of yourself that were pushed into exile. Not to fix them, but to finally understand them. You've spent so much time trying to grow, evolve, improve. But what if your next evolution isn't up, it's inward? Not becoming more, but becoming honest. The anger you've tried to repress? That's your boundaries' voice before it ever had words. The fear? That's your nervous system remembering when no one protected you. The stubbornness? Maybe that's the part of you that refused to abandon your truth, even when everyone told you to. These aren't flaws, they're functions. And once you name them, you stop being owned by them. Jung said, the gold is in the dark. And it's not a metaphor for comfort. It's an invitation to go exactly where you swore you never would. To the memory you've minimized. To the shame you've spiritualized. To the part of you that still flinches when someone gets too close. The gold is there, not in your achievements, not in your image, but in the raw, unfiltered, unpolished center of your lived experience. You don't become powerful by avoiding your weakness. You become powerful by knowing exactly where it lives and deciding to lead anyway. You don't build confidence by pretending. You build it by being in a room with your shadow and saying, I see you, you're part of me, let's go. Because the moment you stop performing and start integrating, the moment you say, I don't need to be perfect to belong to myself, that's the moment you get your life back. So what have you called a flaw that might actually be your genius in disguise? What if the part of you that's hardest to love is the part that knows you best? And what would it look like, not to silence it, but to let it speak? There's something sacred about finally coming home to the part of you you've spent your whole life running from. Maybe it's the part that cries too easily, the one that overthinks, the one that walks away too fast or holds on too long, the one that always knew but was told you're too sensitive, too intense, too much. But now, after everything, maybe you're starting to see it. You were never too much. You were just more than they could handle. You were never broken. You were responding to a world that taught you to hide. The pain, the flaw, the shadow, it's never been a mistake, it's been the invitation. Jung said one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And when you finally see that the flaw you've hated was the signal, not the enemy, something shifts. You stop trying to become someone better. You start becoming someone real. Not healed, not fixed, just whole. Because healing isn't about rising above. It's about going back for what you left behind, the courage you buried, the anger you silenced, the tenderness you coated in sarcasm. You go back, you feel it, you sit with it, you let it breathe. And then without force, without performance, you rise. Not because you've changed who you are, but because you finally stopped abandoning it. So this is your moment. Say it in the comments, in the mirror, in the quiet of your own heart. What's the part of yourself you've spent the longest trying to erase? Name it, let it rise. Because you were never the flaw. You were the gold beneath it, and now you remember. Let that be the beginning.